And the masters of the universe. I am Adam,
Oh,
Prince
shit,
of
it's
Eternia,
wrong.
defender of the...
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jaded, and I'm putting together these 5 class videos just to sort of go over all the skills and give a sort of first impressions, just a very casual first impressions on every class in the beta, and maybe for those people who aren't in the beta can check these out and maybe get a better understanding of what class they want to play when the game actually comes out. But I'm gonna say this probably before every video. This is a very early impressions. I mean, you only get 13 levels to get a tool around with the character, and you know, just not a lot of content to play through. So your experience is going to change as you level up and go through and progress through the game. But this is just very early on, so no one gets upset over that. And also, it's my own opinion, and most likely it's going to change, as a lot of this is theory crafting about skills that aren't, you know, usable yet. So just wanted to get that out of the way. So starting off with the skills here, I'm going to go through the primary skills. All 3 of these are open in the beta. The one I use most is Cleave, and I'll get to why in a second. But these 2, Frenzy and Bash, seem just way more useful later in the game, or even when you get more skills, you know, combining them, you know, always having Cleave for like AoEing down monsters, but using Bash and Frenzy in certain situations could be possible, So starting off with Bash, you get 2 rune effects in the beta, and I don't use Bash too much, but I could see it being great for, say, like boss fights. And later in the game, you're going to get this ability, which I think is going to make Bash way better, which increases all the damage of your skills by 18% once you stack it. So, like, that's huge. That's huge. That's going to make Bash super useful once you hit level 26. But the worst part of Bash, and most of these skills in general, like, I don't know why you would ever build a barb like this. Maybe someone could come up with a scenario where you want to have knockback on your abilities, but I just find it super annoying to push monsters away from you, and it was like that in Diablo 2. The only way I could see it being like a viable build, or like an interesting build, is if you're with a lot of ranged people and you're just building straight damage, or even like magic find where you don't want to take damage, and then using something like weapon throw or some ranged abilities like your seismic slam. But I just don't see how like knockback is a good thing. Like, maybe it's good for bosses, but yeah, I'm just not a fan of knockback at all in this game. And there's so many skills with runes or just innate ability to knock back mobs that I don't know, it's kind of confusing to me. So moving on to Frenzy, I think this is the most useless primary Fury generator in the game, in the beta right now, because you can't get past level 13. But once you start adding these runes to it, I think it's gonna shine. It's gonna really shine. So for example, you can add a rune effect. So actually, let me go back. Frenzy basically just makes your attack speed go faster, up to 5 times stacks, up to 5 stacks I should say, just with Frenzy. Like, it doesn't increase your attack speed for other abilities, it's just Frenzy, and that's why it's kind of useless right now. But once you start adding these runes, it starts giving Frenzy purpose. So for example, increases your movement speed by 15%. Something everyone loved about Frenzy in Diablo 2. You just go, you know, super fast attack speed, super fast run speed, run through, and you know, it's just a way to play Diablo that's super fun, just to be like on crack, running through mobs. So that could be potentially really good, just to increase your movement speed. that's one that's really good. And also at level 59, this is super late in the game, but this is also similar to what Bash is gonna do, where it stacks up your damage on everything up to 20%. So another great rune in my opinion. It's gonna be very useful. But for the most part, I'm using Cleave, and it's pretty much my go-to ability. You know, great for breaking barrels, cleaving down tons of mobs, because you're never really fighting just one mob. Even in boss fights, even with King Leoric, you're killing a lot of mobs every now and then. So I just find Cleave my go-to ability, and it doesn't really have super interesting runes later in the game, which is why I think people are gonna gravitate more towards Bash and Frenzy later on. But you know, Cleave is always gonna be great to use. So moving on to the secondary skills, we got Hammer the Ancients, which is an ability that you get pretty early, and it's just a great Fury spender. I personally don't like it too much, but it does have the potential to output a lot of damage if it crits. You know, it is one of the higher damaging skills. But I just find Rend, like the AoE of Rend, especially with the rune, to be much better use of your Fury, because, you know, 20 Fury, it is a decent chunk. And by the time you get that Fury back, this physical dot is actually, you know, it's over. You got to reapply it. So I just find Rend more useful. Even with this Rolling Thunder rune, it's just not that interesting to me. You know, later on you can make it do a ton of damage, 270 with this one, with a smaller area. But I find that to be the weak point of this skill is, not only is it just a really small area of effect, it's not really a great arc on it. It has a very small cleave, but also I just find the sound of it to be one of the few sounds in the game that I'm just like left wanting more with the ability. It doesn't feel powerful. It could really use some more oomph to this skill. Pew. Pew. And the fact that it's so similar to Seismic Slam in a lot of ways, apart from Seismic Slam does cost more Fury, you know, it is 30, but it's just a huge arc, and it just feels way more powerful. And it's just much more fun to use Seismic Slam than it is Hammer the Ancients. So I find myself not using this ability that much. Seismic Slam is just way funner. Even though it has knockback, I just really love the visual and the sounds of what this ability does. So this is one of the few abilities that doesn't have a way to remove the knockback. A lot of abilities that just have an innate ability to knockback have a rune that can remove that. But with Seismic Slam, it's always going to do that. There is a chance to stun enemies with this one, or you can increase the knockback distance. So kind of strange that you can't actually get rid of the knockback. So moving on to the defensive section, we got Ground Stomp. Great ability. I think this is gonna serve a ton of purpose throughout the whole game. It's a 4-second AoE stun, and you know, in 12 yards is pretty decent. So super useful. Works on King Leoric. You know, I can see it working for bosses later down. And 4-second stun is just huge. It interrupts like when he's summoning. You can chain it with other barbs, so you basically have permanent lockdown. Like it almost seems kind of broken that there's no diminishing returns on stuff like that, but that's the way it works right now in the beta. And here you go again. You can actually add a rune to add knockback. But this is a more interesting one. Increases the area to 24 yards, so you know, double the range increase. And enemies are pulled closer before the strike lands. So it's sort of like this vortex ability, similar to what the monk gets. Like that sounds really nice to me, to be able to like vortex all these mobs in and then AoE them down while they're stunned. Sounds super useful. And then the other defensive that's really go-to for me is Leap. There's never a bad use for this skill. 10-second cooldown, generates rage. I just feel like it's one of the key abilities to a barb is to have leap. At least this early in the level, it allows you to jump gaps. Not a lot of classes get that much mobility. You know, like the Demon Hunter, you only get Vault, which you can't jump over gaps. And Sork doesn't get Teleport yet, so it just allows you to be super mobile, jump in and out of danger. And I think Leap's gonna be a very, very key skill. Moving on to the 2 Might abilities that you get in the beta. Ancient Spear almost has 0 purpose without runes. It's very hard to aim it on the target that you want. Stuff just gets in the way, barrels get in the way, like the environment's always working against you in that regard. So this very like accurate ability sort of loses its luster without any runes, where like you could add 3 spears so it pulls like a cone, or you could add this harpoon one, which I think will be really, really good, where it pierces like a straight line and drags them. But for the most part in the beta, just not a great ability early on, just to me, in my opinion. So moving on to Revenge, it's a free ability and it has a 15% proc chance every time you're hit. And it's just free damage and free lifesteal for every enemy hit. So really useful ability, like when you're being swamped and hit a lot. It procs quite often in that regard. And just throwing in free damage is always good. A few of the interesting runes here. You can generate more fury and heal for more, which is, of course, you're gonna want that. For the most part, having runes versus not, you're always gonna want runes. And because they're there, you don't have to find them. Like, they changed it so everyone's gonna have these runes that, yeah, you're gonna want a rune for every skill for the most part. And then there's another one where it's just a flat damage increase. And then another one where it's a 30% chance. So, you know, almost 1 in every 3 hits, you're gonna proc this free ability to do a lot of damage and heal yourself. So I see Revenge getting a lot of use. And then moving on to the tactics, you don't get any of these in the beta anymore. They used to give weapon throw. We got to test that out earlier on, but they moved that up to level 14. It was a fun ability, similar to D2 in that regard. They had a similar one there. And then also all of these sort of buffs and debuffs they took out, you don't get anymore, because they were really useless early on. Like early levels, you don't need damage increase, you don't need defense increase, you don't need to reduce the enemy's damage. Like none of that was really useful, and I'm glad that they pushed them to later in the levels so that you have more interesting stuff to play with early on. And then same for the rage. None of these are in the game yet, in the beta yet, I should say. So my go-to setup for the beta is pretty much having cleave, seismic slam as my fury dump, leap to, you know, generate and to be mobile, do some AoE damage, and either ground stomp or revenge, just depending if I want to do more damage, or crowd control for a boss fight or something. And then passives, you get 3 here. 1 increases, you know, your chance of finding health globes, and you gain more life from them. Never used it really, never found the need to, because of how easy the early levels are. And then Ruthless, which increases your damage output, which I used, just made you do more damage. Like, of course you're gonna want that when you don't need damage reduction. And then Nervous Steel increases your armor. So I stuck with Ruthless for this. Alright guys, that's going to do it for the Barbarian. If you wish to check out any of the other classes, I'll put them at the end so you can click on them. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
We will meet again.